Okay, back to the random stuff. We got 10 randos left, and then 2 at the end. So let's see what our first random of the day is going to be. It is 7. Lupin Zero. Okay, I think this is an OVA series or like a short TV special. Been a while since I've seen some Lupin. Let's give it a go. Alright, I got through about 4 of the 6 episodes of Lupin Zero before I decided that I really just don't care anymore. I do have to give it credit for at least having style. I will give it that. It's the same style that you expect from Lupin, but you know what? Having style apparently is enough for me nowadays to get through at least 4 episodes. Because the rest of the industry is just so bankrupt of it. It didn't always look great, but at least it always looked like it was trying to look like something. Like it's got that got those classic kind of Lupin character designs. It's got sort of the character designs have like this grit to their outlines. The set deck, background designs, like the world design looked really cool because it's like set in the 60s, and so we've got all this like older technology and such. It actually looks like they tried to make it look accurate to the period. But I don't really care about what this story is going for, I guess. Like, there are elements that I do care about, like episode 3 introduced the actual Arsène Lupin, which I don't think has been done before in Lupin. I'm not sure. I'm not a Lupin expert. I've only seen like a few entries into the series. But it was fun to see him just literally just grabbing 2 different sets of titties, like on-screen titties. That was interesting. This fucking dirty, wily old man. That's not what I was expecting from Arsène. But it was cool to see. He was a fun character. But who is not a fun character is Lupin. Like the actual Lupin who will become Lupin III by the end of this series based on the title of the last episode. But his motivations are confusing. Like, he says that he basically just doesn't want to be told what to do. So, like, he doesn't want to follow in his grandpa's footsteps because that pisses him off. But he's also just constantly a troublemaker, so he says that he wants to do what his dad wants him to do and stay on the straight and narrow, but he just doesn't do that ever. So he's just a confusing character. Like, he doesn't seem to want anything except to fuck with people, which is fine, but like, I would have been much more interested in a Lupin who wanted to be Lupin from the beginning, I guess. Or just a guy who just wants to have fun without putting on this facade of trying to be proper, I guess. It was a little annoying. And oh yeah, Jigen's in this too, who's just a straight up like child gangster slash hitman slash whatever, I guess. Like, he just pulls out a real gun and shoots at kids in the first episode. I'm like, what the fuck? It was wild. I will give it this. This series is wild. This series is wild. I think Lupin fans might like this. I don't know. I am very hit and miss with Lupin so far. I liked part 5 and I liked Castle of Cagliostro. Didn't like part 6. Thought the first was okay. And now I guess I didn't like Zero. The one thing that I would have finished this series for is to see like what the deal with it is with Lupin's dad. Just to see where that's going. But I don't care enough about Lupin himself to really see all of it through. So I'm just gonna move on. Like, there's only 2 episodes left, but that's an hour of my time that I would rather watch other stuff, because we're still over 120 anime behind at this point, and I really want to catch up. That's the long and short of it. I think I'm gonna start being a little harsher, just because I'm done watching like 5s and 6s. I'm done with it. Let's move on. Alright, Lupin Zero off the list. Let's see what we roll next. It's going to be 3. TsunLise. I forget what this is about. I think it might be some kind of tsundere thing. Maybe. Let's figure it out. Goddamn, this show looks like ass. I'll tell you what. It's so not good looking. Not only is it not good looking, but the character designs are just so outdated. And it really shows. This feels like something from like 2016 or 2017. And it doesn't have the artistic or animation chops to make up for that. Plot aside, I could not watch a whole series of this because it is so not good looking. But in terms of the plot, it wasn't all that entertaining to start with, and I definitely could not see myself watching a whole series of this, like, running commentary on an otome game that's, like, not adding anything new to the conversation. Like, I get it's supposed to be like their commentary is going to subtly change the course of these characters as they go on, but I don't think it's going to be done in an interesting way. Like, if this was like a 1 episode or even like 2 episode, maybe OVA, I could see this being like fine. But a whole series? Absolutely not. I could not stand that. Let's move on. Alright, TsunLise is coming off the list. We're down to 10 shows. Finally. We're finally closing in on the end. So let's see. We have 8 randoms left, though. Let's see what we roll next. 5. Eternal Boys. I think this is some kind of slice of life series. Let's see how it do. Jesus Christ, talk about a load of fucking nonsense. Like, okay. 1, there's absolutely no way this guy could have confused an idol interview with an interview for an advertising agency. There's absolutely no fucking way. 2, the reason they pick him is because he is so average that they say that's part of his charm. No, absolutely fucking not. That's stupid as shit. Also, this show looks like ass. Not quite as generic as the previous show, but it's ass in the way that it has, like, no artistic inspiration whatsoever. I couldn't even make it through the first episode, and these are half-length episodes. That sucked shit. Let's move on. Okay, Eternal Boys, off the list. Let's roll another one. We're down to 7 randos. Next up is 2. Spy Classroom. Okay. I vaguely remember hearing stuff about this, but I don't remember any of it. Let's figure out what the hell this show is. You know, compared to the previous 2 shows just being straight trash, something that's just kinda okay is shockingly refreshing, but it's still just kinda okay. I got through about an episode and a half of Spy Classroom. I guess the best point of comparison for this one would be like Princess Principal, where a show like Princess Principal does a lot of this
The stuff that Spy Classroom does kinda okay or just average, Princess Principal does really well. Spy Classroom doesn't really have a interesting or intriguing setting outside of post World War I, or I should say not World War I, because this isn't actually our world. Whereas Princess Principal immediately had a very intriguing steampunky kind of setting. And it had a bit more going on than just paste our world onto this world, other world, and change the names. Spy Classroom really doesn't have, like, interesting characters right away. They're just, like, very basic archetypes pasted onto different cute anime girls. And I do like some of the cute anime girls, like the light blue-haired one, just on an aesthetic level, like in terms of her appearance and her voice acting, is probably my favorite. And I do like the main character, Flower Garden, a bit. Whereas Princess Principal immediately had very interesting characters with well-defined but still pretty archetypal personalities, and it immediately hit you with some really intriguing character backstories. And I think that's probably the biggest thing about the difference between these two, is Spy Classroom is not intriguing in any way whatsoever. It doesn't, like, entice you with anything. There's nothing to be like, ooh, I want to know more about this. Why did this happen? I want to know more about that character. I want to know more about this power dynamic in terms of, like, nations and stuff. Whereas Princess Principal had a lot of that. But even without comparing it to Princess Principal, again, this show is just kind of fine. I could watch this and give it like a strong 5 or a light 6. But that's not what we're here for, so let's move on.
Alright, Spy Classroom is off the list. Come on. And we got time for one more random before we jump down to our end cap. So let's see what we roll big money for. Oh, Lupin III versus Cat's Eye. This is another... We're going to have 2 Lupins in one video segment. That'll be interesting. This one's like This is like a TV special or like O&A or something. Let's see if it's better than Zero.
So this was an Amazon Prime license, and I have my dad's Amazon Prime login on the TV, and it took me longer to figure out how to get the Japanese language with English subtitles on my Roku TV than I actually watched of this show, of this anime. I got about 3 minutes into Lupin III versus Cat's Eye. I literally got to the point where where like Cat's Eye shows up in a police uniform. This anime looks so fucking bad. It's like a full CG series, and the CG is horrendous. It's real bad. Except for Lupin's model, which looked fine from what I saw of it. But it's like, the movement is so, like, jerky, and, like, they move like this, and it's so unrealistic and bad, and the action scenes don't even make up for it. They're still not good the opening action scene is so boring and awful. The lighting isn't particularly interesting, and just in case you want to be like, well, it's CG, you gotta give it a little wiggle room, don't forget that Lupin I exists. Now, I don't love the way that movie looks, but in terms of CG anime, that one looks way fucking better than this. This looks fucking awful. I have no intention of watching 90 minutes of it. Let's move on.
Okay, Lupin III versus Cat's Eye is off the list. That looked awful. So now it's time for the end caps, and we're going to do Tenten Kakume. I think this is like a... this might be an isekai. I know it's Yuri. Let's find out if it's good.
Sasuga Dio Media, you are truly the kings of isekai that nobody gave a shit about until they started airing. I just finished Tenten Kakume, also known as MagiRevo, also known as the magical revolution of the reincarnated princess and the genius young lady. That was really damn good. I bring up Dio Media right at the start because they were also the studio behind one of my favorite isekai from last year, Parallel World Pharmacy. This is really like the little studio that could. They really, like, I haven't finished as many of their shows as I'm kind of hyping them up to be, but they really do come out of nowhere sometimes with something that's genuinely really good, especially in the past few years. I wasn't personally a fan of it myself, but The Saint's Magic is Omnipotent is another one of their fantasy shows that I think is also an isekai, if I recall correctly. And Dio Media is just really good at making really solid-looking productions. Just really, like, very, like, the baseline production for their shows is typically quite a bit sorry. It's typically quite a bit higher than everything around it. It doesn't always grab like the big moments quite as much. It has like its moments here and there, but it really, they aren't like a big flashy studio like Bones or Mappa or anything. And I think that suits them just fine because the overall like just baseline quality of the series is pretty good. Really strong character designs. Love the color design of everything overall. The world itself is just pretty cool. It's just a fun show to look at. It's not like there's nothing particularly amazing about the design sense, but it's just so very tight and very competent at everything. And in the age we're in with modern anime productions, I think really being really competent is something that is to be admired. And also some of the action scenes were really fucking good too. Like some of the big, again, it does have its big flashy moments too. But also the story itself is just really damn good. It's perfectly paced. There's never a slow moment in this series, as if you get invested in what they're doing. And what they're doing is a gay isekai. I was browsing the Wikipedia page for this, and I think it was either Anime Feminist or Anime News Network called it genre yuri. So like yuri in like genre fiction, so like sci-fi and fantasy stuff. It groups it in with stuff like Urasekai, Picnic, and Executioner and Her Way of Life. And that is a term that I am going to be using incessantly now as things that we need more of. Yes, I would like more genre yuri. Genre yuri is good. It's definitely a very different show from Executioner and Her Way of Life, which was also a gay isekai, but in a completely different way. This one is a much less fighty, although it still has its fighty elements, and it's much more about, especially in the last arc of the series, like doing things through like the lens of like nobility and royalty and stuff, and having to function within that system. Like especially in that last arc, some of the stuff in that last arc was more brutal emotionally than some of the gory action scenes in the second arc. Like there's a moment where basically, like, our lead character, Anis, as the princess, basically there's just a bunch of, like, old men talking around her about how they need to use her body to produce an heir. Even though she's very clearly, like, not into it at all. And you really get this absolutely visceral reaction, and you feel how unfair and how disgusting that is. It is. It's some. There's some revolting stuff emotionally in this show, and it really doesn't shy away from that. It really like. This show takes on a patriarchal power structure, very point blank, very, like, not trying to hide what this is, but also being like, and, like, we need to fix this. But also in a way that, like, not every single person in that power structure who matters is, like, bad or evil or misguided or anything. Or, like, I kind of liked that the main royal family, with the exception of the brother, well, we'll get to him. But, like, the king himself is, like, pretty sensible and very, like, forward-thinking. Like, and I like that they established that he and the prime minister are from the, like, reformist party, whereas, like, most of the other nobles are from, like, the conservative party, or whatever they call it. I like that there is that factionality in this world. The royal politics of this world are surprisingly interesting. And along with that, the magic in this world is kind of interesting as well, in that it's not a super well defined magic system. In fact, like, the magic system itself really doesn't get a lot of definition, but what is done with magic and with mana and what can be done with either one is just really fascinating, because that was with our main character being born without the ability to use magic, and also being an isekai character, she basically turns magic into a technology that she can wield. And that was really cool. Liked that. It's a pretty common idea in terms of, like, isekai protagonists. But they don't really hammer on, like, the isekai-ness too much outside of the very beginning until the end. Like, we understand that she is an isekai character from the jump because we see, like, shots of the real world and everything. But she doesn't, like, come out and say, I am from another world until the very end. And they do something really fucking clever in that, like, this last arc is basically, like, about how Anis feels about her worth as someone in this world and how that's tied to her title, how that's tied to her talent, and so on and so forth. And they really, like, the isekaiing has probably the most emotional toll that I've seen, the heaviest emotional toll I've seen on a character so far, is in terms of my memory, like, in terms of what I can remember. Because, like, with a lot of characters, even in, like, some of the darker isekai, like, they don't dwell too much on what the isekaiing has done to them. Whereas with this character, like, she has to contemplate, like, I'm not from here. I potentially took the place of another soul that was supposed to be here. Am I a fake? And that, like, saving that until the very end was just, like, the cherry on top of this really strong but very complicated and also very fragile character that has been built up as Anis throughout this whole series. Easily one of my favorite isekai protagonists. So I'm just going to say right now, this is one of my favorite isekai so far. This is up there in, like Log Horizon Season 1 and like Mushoku Tensei territory. This is up there. Especially because like our secondary protagonist Yuffie is just as strong. We kind of have like an inverse but extremely similar problem of her trying to break free of the restraints that nobility put on her, and how Anis kind of spurs her towards that. And like we have this idea of freedom and what it means to be free within a royal society, and how like I don't want to go to like, oh, it sucks being a rich person and all that, but like as I think it's very important that they were both noble ladies as opposed to men, because they from the jump very clearly have much more restriction placed on them as nobles than men do. This again, it's a very patriarchal system, and so the theme of freedom works really well in this instance. But even the men don't get off scot-free. Like the brother, I was like constantly before like his final confrontation, it was like, is he a shithead? Is he misunderstood? Is he like secretly working behind the scenes? And it's kind of a little bit of everything. He is basically like he basically turns it into a burn it down revolutionary, who ends up just going too far and ends up using his power to crush the people that he was supposed to protect. And the dynamic between him and Anis, his sister, is just so good. Again, it's all about the character dynamics, the power dynamics. That is what makes this show so incredibly captivating and engrossing to watch. I was just completely enraptured start to finish in this fantasy drama. That's what I would sell this as. I would not sell this as like an isekai power fantasy, even though it kind of is. Like both Anis and Yuffie are extremely overpowered. But that's not really what the core of it is. The core of it is using what power they have to navigate a system that is very much stacked against them. And sometimes it gets heavy. Which brings me to the ending. Obviously, spoilers. The ending is the one thing where I'm like, I don't know about this. Because essentially Yuffie commits herself to being an immortal being who's eventually going to lose all of her memories and feelings for everyone around her. But we don't get to that point yet. And it's still, like, this is an ongoing novel series. And there's still the idea of, like, well, Anis is just like, well, I'll figure out a way to undo this whole immortality thing. Or I'll figure out a way to make me immortal. We'll see. And, like, obviously, it's like an open... I think the difference between an 8 and a 9 for me with this is the fact that it is left open-ended. And also the fact that I don't know if we're going to get a second season of this, because they really wrapped up the ending. For as much as they tried to leave it open-ended, cinematically it very much feels like they're wrapping up the story. So if this is the end of the anime, I would be, I am a little disappointed, because it's just basically like the biggest question of the biggest problem in the series, in my opinion, is still on the table. Even though we get, like, canon confirmed romantic togetherness, they kiss several times in this last episode. Good for them. Yuri good. But we still have that giant-ass problem looming over everything. So on the one hand, you could loop it in with the tragic Yuri story, I guess. But I kind of wanted a little... I was hoping for just a little more oomph with the... a little bit more surprise, I guess, with this magical revolution that they're enacting. So I would absolutely love a second season of this. I guess I'm fine with it if there isn't, and I'll just have to start reading the light novels. Because I have started reading light novels lately. I just finished the first volume of I'm in Love with the Villainess. More gay isekai. So, yeah, the show is good. Let's figure out where it goes on the list.
Alright, it took me a while to figure out where I want to put MagiRevo. But I think it actually is going to go pretty well towards the top. And the number 3 spot for now. And you get a strong 8. I just really liked that show. If I was not disappointed in the ending, it very well could have been a 9. Give me a season 2.